August 14th, 2020. If you would, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, board members. Let the record reflect all 5 board members are present. On our agenda today, we have one item under the consent calendar, 3000 series, which is our reentry plan. Mr. Hogue would like to make a few comments before we take a motion on that. So, Mr. Hogue, I'll turn it over to you.
After we've had some discussion and after we got mass surveys back, mass surveys and the survey that was done with the parents, I think the reason that this reentry plan is sitting here is because we're still not clear whether we're gonna get 100% cooperation on the mask issue, and the idea of getting a little idea of gauging our issues dealing with reentry to see if we have cases. So that's why the reentry plan you have in front of you creates the idea of social distancing. That's really what it comes down to, the idea of social distancing. I took that off for a minute so you can hear me more clearly. Social distancing, and that's why the reentry plan, if we do it the way we have it listed here, where what we're doing is essentially A to L, M to Z, we use that as our cut. Essentially, most of our classes will be cut in half. So instead of having 24 or 25 students, you'll have 12 or 13 students. Some of our high school classes that have 29 at the most, even with the virtual school, some of them still have 28 or 27, depending on their enrollments. Those will be cut back to 13 or 14, which gives you the ability to do a lot more social distancing within those classes. So the purpose of this is that purpose. And as you can see, we do it on the first week of school, which is only a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, we do the 8AL. Thursday, Friday, we do the M to Z. And then on the second week, we do the 8AL on Monday, Tuesday, and the M to Z on Thursday and Friday. Wednesday is a day that we have fit only. And the purpose of that is to try to get 3 days a week for our FIT students for their hands-on classes. They will actually be picked up as juniors in the morning and taken to fit, taken home at lunchtime, all the way to their homes, and back in the afternoon with our seniors. So that gives you a little idea. If you notice, there's some comments on the bottom that basically indicate a couple things. Individual schools will work with what we call a blended family. If students have different last names, the principals in those areas will get together and decide that they're gonna go with this student. We're using the lower names, the lower part of the alphabet is the way we want to operate, but they'll coordinate that with the parents, so those students have that opportunity to come together. So we don't, when you're dealing with parents and child care, we don't put a parent in a burdensome situation. Couple comments. What happens at the end of the second week? I will state a couple comments here. We have not received the metric yet from the State Department. We have a meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Okay? That metric becomes our determining factor at the end of that second week. If that metric is operating in what the measurements are as follows according to the state, but we have not seen it. Green means you're full scale, there's no problem, you operate in the green mode. Yellow means you're in somewhat of a precautionary mode, but no major changes needed. Orange is when you begin to get in that major change mode. And that's where we would be looking at staying within a blended model, if that were the case. If it were in the orange mode, and then if it were in the red mode, of course, we are in remote learning at that point if you're in the red mode. It stays in remote learning according to the model for 2 weeks at a minimum, and you look at how it flows from there. A couple questions that have come to me, and I'll clarify this with the board. A couple questions that have come to me. What happens if we have a couple cases in the first week or so? As a Board of Education, we have a right to call a board meeting within a 24-hour period. I may make a choice based on the situation to shut down schools for 2 days until we have a chance to sit down together as a board and talk about the direction we go with that thing. And that's where we come back together as a board. Say we had cases on a Tuesday, I would have the right to shut down schools on Wednesday and Thursday, give us a chance to sit down on Thursday morning and have a discussion as a board, notify and set up a meeting. That would be a procedural issue that I may so choose to do based on guidance from the health department. So to let you know operationally how we would stand if we had those kind of cases, that's what we could do. People are still concerned about the metric. I will state that we have a board meeting on August the 25th. If the plan is adopted today on August the 25th, if you want to revisit that metric and look at that metric, plans can be adjusted, as we discussed from the very beginning. We're already adjusting today. Plans can be adjusted as we go along. Our principals are very well prepared to adjust by the moment now. It's not, they have gone through so much with us over the summer, it's not a major issue for them to make adjustments. It's an issue that they can adapt to pretty quickly. So that's basically a layout of where we're at.
Okay.
Can we ask questions before we take a motion?
Yes, go ahead.
According to my wife, when she listened to the news this morning, Justice is gonna release the matrix at his news conference at 11:30.
Okay, well, we have a Zoom call at 2 with the state superintendent today, and I'm sure that he's gonna release it, that's when they'll go over with us, and we have a Zoom call at 2 o'clock.
Second question, if it turns out we're red today, does that mean sports activities cease immediately?
Cease immediately.
Okay. Third thing, and you and I have talked, and I'm still confused, okay? We're voting on 2 weeks. Why aren't we voting on a full plan for school that you're submitting to Charleston today?
Our plan for Charleston, all it has to be submitted is what you're gonna do variation-wise. They're not asking you how you're gonna do it at all. The plans that Charleston wants, they wanna know what variations do you have that exist within your plan. They're not asking for you to say, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, Steve, okay? Charleston is giving you, we have to submit to them models of what we could do, is all they're asking for, because they know how volatile it is.
Well, I was under the impression on Governor Justice's directive orders that county superintendents and county board of educations approve the plans that are being submitted to Charleston, and we as a board have not approved the detailed plans. And I'm asking why, as a board, we're not given the opportunity to say yay or nay.
Here's the issue, Steve. I think we reviewed all three of the options we had. The 5-day-a-week model, the blended model, which you have in front of you, or the
I
remote
understand
model.
we discussed.
Remote model.
Okay, I understand we discussed. Mr. President, I mean, what's everybody else's feeling?
I guess I'm confused. I thought we did approve it. Maybe we didn't.
No, we haven't approved anything.
This is the first
time we're gonna approve anything.
Well, I thought that this was the reentry with a 5-day.
5-day model,
Moving into that, so my understanding is what we're voting on today is a blended opening followed by a 5-day
That's what I thought as
recommendation.
well.
Yeah, but nowhere does it say that we're telling the public that in week 3 that us 5 board members approving a 5-day model after this, and no place is there that we're approving their
Steve,
the
I think-
superintendent's recommended virtual school option.
Here's
And I
what-
just think we're supposed to vote on it.
I think, and I will tell you the reason, all we have to submit to the state is what options we could use. And that's what they've asked for in a template. As far as approving, I think that changes by the day. You know, that issue. It doesn't, we can't put a plan forward that we're gonna say this is concrete and this is what we're staying with. We've indicated today we're approving a blended model to start and move to 5 days if the numbers are good. If those numbers aren't good, we have to come back and say we're changing it. That's why we're submitting to the state, and Anna has it on the computer. They gave you a template. You're just telling them, we plan to do these following things if at all possible.
Right. But on the virtual school option, we went from using the state program, the proximity, to now Schoology with our people, okay? And I don't have a problem you all going to the steps. Where I have a problem is we haven't said that's what we approve for virtual school at the end of the process. I just think as a board, under Governor Justice's directive, that the superintendent and the 5 county Board of Education members approve the final plan. And we as a board have not approved a final plan. Other than talking here or there, you know, I have nothing in front of me to read that this is our plan, other than what we've discussed professionally, okay? And that's where I have a problem.
I mean, we did a PowerPoint that had the whole plan on it, that broke it down. I don't know what to say.
Well, we heard the information, I understand, but we didn't approve what you told us.
But that's what we're doing today.
Just the two,
No, we're approving his
The blended
entire
entry
plan.
part of that plan.
I understand, but I don't know the rest of the plan. We haven't approved the rest of the plan yet. Where is it? It's not here, it's just 2 weeks.
Well, members, I'll look to your comments, but I understand the plan that's been discussed thoroughly over the last several meetings.
And I think maybe the confusion is this doesn't have the 3rd week on, which would be 5 full days or virtual,
Yeah,
blended, or remote learning, depending upon the metric.
right.
Right.
And
Yeah, if there was a statement in here in the package of that, I wouldn't have said anything.
Add that statement to what your vote is. You can amend it right now by adding that statement to it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a matter of just putting that statement to it. You can amend that.
I thought
as
this
we
was
sit here
just
before.
an example of the first 2 weeks, which was a
And
modification.
then 5
to
days,
what-
and then 5 days.
actually, Ms. Tanner and Ms. Whitlock have an opportunity, I have a motion on me, so please.
I don't have any questions. I thought we were set with this being, these are the options available, and they'll be matched with a metric. Whatever the metric is. So whatever the metric is, we slide in what was, we reviewed. Whether we voted approval or not, I didn't know whether that was even our place, because the superintendent runs the school system. We are his boss, so I don't know the protocol. That's a Mr. Gray question.
And it is an option. We don't have to necessarily vote on it, but we are. Mr. Hogan and I agreed that that's something we would do. Ms. Tanner, any thoughts?
Well, I hope whatever our plans are will follow the CDC guidelines, and that we are going to require kids to wear a mask.
That is part.
That is part of what we're doing.
That was in there.
Okay? And we have talked about that, and, you know, as I understand the CDC guidelines, we're supposed to see a decline in cases in our area for 14 days and meet those 3 health indicators. And as I understand that the transmission rate, the positivity rate, and the number of beds that you have available in the hospital now, there may be something else that's gonna be included in that matrix. And I would hope we can trust that matrix that our state health department comes up with for our area. And that's how we're supposed to operate our school system. If we're green, then we can go 5 days a week. If we're yellow or orange, then we need to consider some kind of blended, option. 2 days a week, 1 day a week, something, okay, rather than having all the kids at school at one time. And if we're red, then we're supposed to, everybody is virtual school. And as I understood Mr. Hoag when he explained virtual school before, we do understand that we have 500 kids that do not have access to internet. But those kids would be provided
A device.
paper education, okay?
Well, a device and download capability.
Okay, and, or something, so that they have, an opportunity to get an education. We're not gonna forget about the kids that don't have internet. But we did have a plan that addressed those kids that did not have internet capability.
Oh.
That was my understanding of our other kids, the ones that are coming to school will go according to what the matrix says that we do in our county.
I think there's a very quick solution to the concern that's being expressed here this morning, and that's simply to amend the motion to accept the reentry items I have in front of you. And if the metric so chooses, it'll move us to a 5-day-a-week model once we're finished with 2 weeks. If the metric does not indicate such, we go into whatever the metric indicates that we need to do. That's really follows the governor's plan to the letter.
Well, and that is the plan of, as you've explained it.
Yes.
So, again, I'll open up for a motion and we'll see where it goes from there.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion here. And again, I tried to do it without making it too complicated for myself. In number one, I'm, with the matrix we're coming out with on the state level, I'm a little puzzled why we'll have a yellow. You know, it's either
I agree with that
green,
statement.
orange, or red.
It
The
fuzzles it up.
yellow and green, is it the same, or is yellow and orange the same? I think that's to be determined by the, whatever, who comes out of the matrix. Anyway, that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we, accept the, 2-week reentry plan that, our superintendent has proposed, which will go along with our original entry plans, that once this 2-week is, completed, and the matrix so allows, that we move to the phase 1 plan that we have, which is 5 days, face-to-face, and or virtual, for those who choose virtual. And then as the matrix indicate, we go to our phase 2, which would be blended, and necessary phase 3, which would be, remote learning. Mr. President, that's my motion.
I second that motion.
I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Ray, I have a second from Mr. Sockett. Now I'll open it up for any additional questions or comments.
The only comment I have, I had a private conversation with our superintendent, Deputy Nick Mooney, who runs the Midland Trail Community Center and Midget League Football, posted on Facebook yesterday where he's trying to put a schedule together, because they do Midget League with other counties, and he released information that when the matrix comes out today, that we're a red county. And of course, we can't confirm that yet, and that scares me, because when Dr. Stewart was here, we were all led to believe that we weren't gonna have a problem. We were gonna go back to school 5 days, which I assumed meant we were green, and I'm quite concerned about that.
Steve, I looked, and that's what I asked Cindy this morning when she was here. I've looked at every other person's maps. There's so many maps that go around based on different numbers.
Okay.
That's what I've heard the same things, and you're not wrong when you make that statement, but I think there's so much confusion. We need to pick the device that we're given as our driving force.
Okay.
That what we're given from the State Department, because, you know, what I kind of said, I think, I remember 3 or 4 meetings ago, we've got to pick one source we make our determination off of. We can't listen to who pulls this source, or who pulls this source, or who pulls this source. We've got to use the source that
Okay.
the State Department gives us to operate.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
But we are prepared as a county, as we see the matrix, to apply what is necessary. Our principals have been made very aware of that at every level.
Absolutely. There's another meeting this morning here in about an hour and a half with them, or an hour.
And I know Mr. Slockett brought up a minute ago about the activities after school. I'm kind of interested in what matrix will determine those as well, whether it be orange, red, yellow, green, whatever. And, so our principals will be quite in tune to that as well, I would assume.
Yeah, they are.
I just have one comment I'd like to make, and, we're going through all this trouble to get a matrix, red, yellow, orange, green, for the school system. So, are government employees gonna go back to work too, according to that system, or are they using the school system for some kind of social experiment? That's my question, because we don't have people working in those government offices in Charleston. We can't go to you can't go get a driver's license, you can't go to the DHHR and see people. We don't have people in those government offices. Do they have everybody working down there at the State Department of Education? I would bet you no.
I can't, honestly, my word was some were staying still at home. Honestly, you're not wrong, Ms. Gainer, I've heard the same thing.
Honestly, I think what we're hearing now, primarily people are focused on our children. And, nationwide, I mean, like, when you watch the news right now, they talk about a lot of things, but the focus has been, the best free entry for our students, because as many of us, that's our main concern right now, because of the welfare of our kids and what's going on with them. And so I think a lot of the major part, is directed at the schools. Now, he may use it for other means. You know, again, it kind of puzzled me. You come out 2 weeks ago with the matrix. When you come out with something, you should have the matrix already developed. And we've been waiting 2 weeks on hot coals. What's going to be the matrix?
Well, the other thing that really concerns me is the health officials go over this every day, 10 and 15 times a day, that we need to wear these masks and wear them correctly, and we need to wash our hands and practice good hygiene. Now, I understand that the governor is the only one that can mandate and put teeth in that mandate. We don't have that ability to do that here. But we are putting our kids at risk, their grandparents at risk, and our teachers and school service personnel at risk when we don't mandate that these kids wear masks when they're in the classroom. I know you all have spent countless hours getting PPE equipment for our teachers, and I hope they have masks and shields. I know you've got all kinds of cleaning equipment, you've got stuff to take the temperature, we've got computers, we've got iPads, we've worked on our ventilation system, we've talked about water, we've talked about one-way halls, we've done all these things to try to make our schools as safe as possible. But I just hate to see our children put in this situation where we test them in the adult world. Because you can make those government employees wear masks and wear them correctly if they want to keep their job. But we can't make kids do that if their parents don't make them do that. And that's the liability that we're going to have in our school system. And I think it's something to be concerned about. I really wonder, you know, how many people do we have to have die before people take this seriously? It is real. It's not a hoax. It's not a conspiracy. This is real. And we have to teach our kids how to deal with something that none of us have ever had to deal with before.
Ms. Tanner, I for one, we won't know how well our students will do until we actually try. And then I think at that point, if our administration, principals, teachers come back to us and say, hey, we got 50% not wear a mask, what we're going to do, I think we need to take a harder look at it. I agree with you. I think masks are something that we must have. But at the same token, we listen to Dr. Stewart and Ms. Harper indicate we got to be careful not to make it a punitive thing with little kids and so forth. So it's going to be a fine balancing act. And I think our teachers have confidence that they will be able to do it in a manner to convince the majority of our kids what they have to do. So we got to decide if we have 3, 4, 5 kids that are being hard-headed about it, do we shut down the whole school because 3 or 4 kids? And so I think I'd like to see us get into the operation. I agree with you, Ms. Tanner, and then we get evaluation after we've been in it a while.
So why can't we require them to wear masks?
We intend to require them to wear a mask. The word require, and then what do you do if they don't? I think
That's
that
correct.
really
I
becomes
don't
the
know about
question.
that, but I think a statement from this
Oh, there's no problem.
Well,
We're making
done
that
that,
statement.
yeah.
that needs to be in.
We're making that statement.
Does
There's
it
no
need to
doubt.
be in the motion to
It's already in the plan.
It is.
Okay,
So-
okay. I
Well, if I remember what Dr. Stewart said, they made a conditional recommendation to us to go to school 5 days based on the fact that the kids were gonna wear a mask. If they don't, they were gonna social distance. And most likely, if they don't wear a mask, not all classrooms are gonna be able to practice social distance. So if those items aren't met, I heard that Dr. Stewart and Terry Harlan are gonna pull their recommendations to support for 5-day school. And we won't be able to go 5 days because we don't have the health department support. That's what I heard. I mean, what,
I think they're curious to see what the result's gonna be those first 2 weeks. In terms of what you said, Steve, I think they reiterated something close to that. The idea is they wanna see that happen, you know, as actually giving us a pool and saying we can't have school. I'm not sure they're ready to make that kind of statement, but they have reiterated that the expectation is if you're ever gonna get to 5 day a week, you gotta have the mask on. And what we've talked to our principals, and I'll tell you, not to be punitive, try to do all the encouragement. You heard Katie bring that up the other night here at the meeting. Try to do all the encouragement. And the other part of it is, and I don't mind saying this on YouTube, to the general public, I have made the statement to the principals that I have no problem with you, if the students refuse to wear a mask, calling them in the office and asking mom and dad, and getting mom and dad on the phone and asking them, well, if you don't wanna do this, why don't you put them in virtual school? Cause they're causing more problems for us, because they're causing other children not to be able to be educated.
I agree.
And that's not punitive as much as it's reminding them that they're affecting the lives of other children. The staff survey we talked about the other night, that's probably gonna go out the first of the week, and I wanna use that information simply along with that to show how many families are volatile, the volatility of families, so that's another measurement we can use to say to people when they get in that argument about the mask wearing, what the circumstances are.
I think, you know, we need to make sure that we push this issue of the mask. With our principals, I think that's a great idea, what you had mentioned. I know that's the first time I've heard that. That's a good suggestion. Principal, bring them in. Well, parents in, say that if you choose not to wear a mask, you might want to go to virtual school then. But we gotta be ready. If we get to the point that we mandate and we don't wear it, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
We gotta decide, are we gonna make it a punitive thing? What are we gonna do? Because we're gonna put our principals in a position that, you know, how they gonna handle it if we're not gonna back them.
Well, and that's a critical issue, and the bottom line is that if once groups of students see students get away with it, then you'll have others who will
Yes.
follow suit. And that's a serious issue
It is.
as I sit here, because, you know, it is not comfortable to sit here with a mask on all the time. It's not comfortable. You know, I'm not and I understand where the students, we've all had to adjust to that world and that life, but it isn't always comfortable. And that, I think a lot of them won't do it to be, just to refuse to do it. It's the comfort level when they're in the classroom. Once students don't wear them, I don't really need this on, I'll take it off. You know what I mean? That kind of an issue, so.
another comment. I assume everybody's aware that AFT and WVEA recommended statewide to county boards of education that we do remote learning statewide for 9 weeks. And of course,
No,
with,
I didn't know that, okay?
yeah. So when we approved that today, you know, the teamwork that we've cultivated for the last 4 years, seems to be on different paths all of a sudden.
Well,
And
can I make a comment on that,
Sure.
Steve?
sure,
I will make a comment. I'm not sure that's consistent with all employees involved in that situation. You have segments that become part of that voting group. The issue is, even with the recommendation, I think we're looking at a couple issues that were brought to our attention and continue to be brought to our attention by WVA and by AFT, and the idea of that social distancing. And we're preparing for that social distancing so that we do minimize and mitigate a little bit the possibilities of what could happen to a teacher or what can happen to an employee or other students. By having them be able to stay further apart, by cutting those numbers in half, we find ourselves in a situation where, you know, I've heard a little conversation, I don't wanna use the word I wanna use, so I'm not gonna use it, but the idea that we're taking kids back and we're kind of testing to see what happens. I think what we're doing by adopting what we have here is we are mitigating the possible circumstances a little bit till we see, you know, the exposure rate should not be as great by having them further apart and less students in that environment. We'll see what happens in the 2-week period, and if there's a problem, then immediately I think we may move another direction.
And I'll be interested in the matrix, that's what I'm interested in seeing here this afternoon. I think that's gonna be a lot to tell us as well.
Well, and that's been my problem all along, that we vote before we have the facts. We vote before we have the numbers, before we know exactly where we are. But we still have 2 weeks or more
Well, and
before
beyond the-
school starts. So if we all agree that we can change at a moment's notice according to the numbers, and that's what I hear people saying, you know, 'cause honestly, I know these kids need to be in school 5 days a week, especially the kindergarten through 5th grade. If I had my brothers, they'd go to school 5 days a week, and we'd spread them out all over the county, because they cannot get the fundamentals to do higher learning if we don't have them there for a while, okay? And there is a window when kids learn to read, and if they don't, they're gonna suffer. And our world's gonna suffer if they don't accomplish what we're supposed to get accomplished in that window.
I will have on the, and I'm listening to what everybody says, I will have on the September 25th agenda an update and a revote on September the 25th.
I don't know that we need a revote, but we have the option
To revote.
to revisit it as needed.
An option to revisit as needed. It doesn't even have to be on a board meeting day.
And we all realize situations may change between now and
It's a
the
moving
opening of
target,
school.
guys.
Yes.
So, and we have multiple meetings that we can get if there's a need to bring that onto the agenda, so.
And I do think that that when I look at the numbers for virtual school, this whole thing makes me, anyway, this makes me feel better about social distancing, because I'm not sure that all the other schools that we've been seeing on the news that have gone back to school have implemented anything like this. It looked to me like they all heard it in on the first day of school.
Like in Georgia, pictures
Yeah,
I saw
and
in Georgia.
this really, 300 kids a day, 2 days a week at Oakville High School compared to 1,000. I mean, those kinds of things gave me a little bit, cut my anxiety a little bit. I mean, I think the social distancing is important. It's gonna be difficult to not have the teacher come to the desk and help the student. And there's gonna be those kinds of things that everybody's gonna have to think through. And it sounds to me after the presentation the other night that there's obviously a lot of thought. I mean, we're all intelligent people and this changes every single day. So today we may be green, tomorrow we may be red, and everything revolves around those colors. My concern is, as confusing as this all is to us and to your staff, how are we gonna make sure we're communicating this to the public in an easy way? I mean, are we gonna have a flag out front every day that's the right color? I mean, there's gotta be a mechanism so that there's no confusion on Facebook and on the news and blah, blah, blah. So that goes on, and I know that's up to you, Gary, but it just, when I look at it, I'm confused, and I have to, every week I have to look at just the 2 weeks, I can't imagine a parent, grandparent, a single mom or dad trying to figure this out day
We'll
to
probably
day.
need
What
to do-
day is it and what color is it? I mean,
We'll probably
it's a
need to
lot.
do an update on our webpage. I think that's really important to
Yeah,
do
there
those
needs
kind of
to be,
things.
I don't
You know,
know,
to
I mean,
give out
that's
that
your job,
information.
not mine, I'm
Bob
just,
has gotten more with the videos,
Yeah,
and we can
it's
probably get
just
weekly
gonna
updates
be
and keep parents
confusing.
informed.
what day is it, what color is it?
And perhaps
is it-
even there's an
which half of the-
indicator.
Which half of the day, week do I get, I mean, it's a very,
Yes.
it's gonna
It is,
be
you're right.
extremely confusing.
TK Klein, in looking at these numbers of virtual school, and I know it's kind of hard to maybe get at this, but percentage-wise, for example, kindergartners, 124 have chosen virtual. That concerns me, like Ms. Cannon said. But what percentage of the kindergartners is that? 10%, 20%?
About fifth, isn't it?
Kindergarten registration right now is 371 students.
371. So look at that number, for example. They should be able to social distance pretty well in a kindergarten class, because except for Guybridge Elementary School has one.
Wait here. Hold for a second here, Mr. Ray. The only trouble with that issue is, that's what I point out. To be able to deliver virtual school without any cost to the system, without any additional cost to the system, we've had to, what I would call, slide those students over. And have done that, like, if I were at New River Primary, and we have how many kindergarten teachers, I won't say it wrong. 9. We took
Correct.
4 teachers now virtual teachers in front of them. Deliver county. In their class, we had to move to those classes.
So you have 14 teacher, 15, 18.
Still fine.
From Golly Bridge.
Them all.
More of those would be 17, right, when I make that?
To kind of have example, you class size limitation. Department of Education requires keep the same class size limitation in virtual school. Consequently, he's discussing sliding students over at New River meeting based on the number of New River they have a high number of students virtual.
then go to
We can email Steve, yes. Not virtual first. The students have, they're going to students that are meeting before a team has to the best environment. A medically fragile student, the best environment could be in a, with a student who has leading that may not, and after discuss team hash needs of the child, out and the team could decide even more better options. But we would do yes,
how we can graders to be on.
They can.
I
Can Anna answer that?
second grade, the say as loudly as I listening is it, we all know how to read, but to read. I have a math. I'm not trained, and I have my own kindergarten. First, the best place for them to order school.
thank you.
question, I apologize. School versus in taking teach, we go a teacher of English.
In middle school, and because if I'm a middle school teacher, 2 sections and 1 section. So if I'm a school, I will have at a specific is teaching math or social studies. For all students, they have a system for them. They're going to be like in Fayette County.
Class,
No, they'll only so that they teach brick. That's all they'll do. They teach brick and mortar. 9 to 9:50. So no one's in front of them. The kids log on to through West Virginia T. Don't have anyone in front of them together. And how want to be a live teacher. They can do ability, but that'll have duty functions in case they assign that will make time so that, and then we'll also keep them on track.
track, how much
Absolutely.
someone's not doing anything, it's like not being in school.
Adjustments to that.
Could be absent,
Well, versus code are
But we
And
don't,
that's if they're not
No.
logged
by
Huh?
code.
By code.
How we will treat that in school. We'll send emails to the log of that coming up on the next board. They have to have progress. We'll turn that child who's not
our teacher, big job, keep up this stuff, so God, all I can say.
go to remote learn.
fully. We can't, can we essentially most Sunday homework are virtual. What makes you do any type of
All right, I have a second from vigorous this morning. Our plans have been, know that every situation, we're going to have to attend his staff as necessary. So, for a vote. For
aye?
any motion carries. Mr. Superintendent, comments are
Virtual school in front of you. That metric later. Format that I can email to you, don't won't get a receiving today. Make the metric explanation at the beginning part. Otherwise, because it'll become statewide. Update on. I probably want to at least, you know, we certain segments of borders want like a block. Careful, I make this construction that occurred. There was no geotech. We look at the ground, site preparation, so that we don't 20 years tax or does something. A lot of geotech work so important to understand why. I've been this week looking at drainage. Pat's geotech. I'm trying to make so we look at long-term effects without doing all that stuff years, but the question is 50 years, not 3 or 4. One board.
any.
I just want to point a question to the administrators. You know, and work that you've had to do continued change the last 6 or 8.
This board, our questions, teachers and administrators, as well as our staff, appreciate office situation, already empowered to make this happen. And, just like the same areas, principals will be I'm confident that
Correct. Just we don't to power. Period. We may choose to based on numbers. Aware of that, I don't mind. Mr. Gray, power period. Exercise of power.
Comments? If not, our next meeting is 6 p.m. 12-hour on August board office.
column right here.